Hey Zoe, how are you
Hey,
doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, man. It's a privilege to be able to have you here. You're such an awesome guest. You have such an awesome podcast. Like I said in the green room and everything too, that I enjoyed your Teen Wolf review that you just dropped, and it was fantastic.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. Thanks for inviting me on. I love being on the show. I like chatting with you. I feel like we have similar interests, so we're gonna get along just fine. Just fine.
Yes, we will, as always, my friend. But yeah, this is actually The Wizard, and it had a budget at the time of $6 million. It made $14.3 million at the box office, so it didn't really draw the appeal to audiences like it wanted to. But it became a cult classic later on, and I remember watching this for the very first time. It was in when I was in Boston for about 2 or 3 months visiting my grandparents, and it came on USA Network, and I just fell in love with the overall story. I'm a huge gamer as well, so this really hit home with me as far as that goes. What about for you?
You know what? The first time I watched it, I wasn't expecting much. I think I saw this in at home on video. So I wasn't expecting much, and I had a I had a lukewarm feeling towards it. I thought, it's all right, meh. It's like I felt like it was just a clever commercial for the big video game that Nintendo was marketing at the time. Oh, they was actually marketing a couple of products and that game. So
Right,
and that's how I kind of viewed it as, and I thought the story was just okay at the time that I first
right.
saw it.
So we're going into it now as an adult. What did you think of it?
Oh, I have a whole new take on it now. I mean, it's still clearly a commercial because everybody's playing the NES. There's like no other video game system in existence. But I thought that it had a lot of heart. I was like, oh, this is, and then it had a lot of great actors. It was some big actors. So they really wanted, or they really felt that this movie was going to be big. I mean, they had Bo Bridges, Kristen Slater, uh, uh, I want to say Randy Savage, but his name isn't Randy
For
Savage.
Savage. Yeah. Oh yeah, brother. I want to play some Nintendo. Oh yeah. Yeah, I can just see it, but yeah.
Mr.
But yeah.
Young Mr. Savage was in there, and that was like at the height of his popularity. And he's a really good child actor. I mean, he just ate up the scenery in the film. So it actually had a good story with a great script. I like the dialogue. They really went for it. So now when I look at it now, I was like, this movie really had a lot of heart. They really made it a great effort to make a good movie and a great story.
Most definitely, man. This to me, hands down, has a lesson to be told in this movie. It's one of my favorites. But yeah, basically, it starts off with Jimmy Woods. He suffers from PTSD after his twin sister Jennifer, which we find out later on. We don't find out until like in the middle of the film that she drowned, and after 2 years, that was actually 2 years earlier. And it just happens to be prone to randomly Jimmy just wandering away from home, and and carries around a lunchbox while frankly repeating the word California. So we don't even know why he's repeating California. All we know is this dude wants to go to California, and he's going to get up and run away because he wants to go to California.
Right,
And
right.
I like how they ended up using like an airplane to track him down. You wind up seeing these cars pass him by too, and finally the cops catch up with him, and then they bring him back over to where his parents are, and then you find out that basically they want to put him in a home.
Right. They want to put him in some kind of mental institution for children because they're having a hard time keeping up with him because it's just the two parents and him, and he keeps like wandering off. And so and it's like this isn't the first time that he wanders off. So they're like, and the father, it's not his father, it's his stepfather. His stepfather's like, well, we got to put him in a home because we can't just keep looking for him like this. And the police are getting frustrated. And so that's what they end up doing. They end up putting him in a essentially a mental institution. And I think what the case was is like I think the language that we would use nowadays is that he had some form of autism that was brought on by his PTSD, but that's not the language that they're using back then. They use a whole bunch of different words, but they never say that he had autism. That, I don't even think that was in a conversation. It definitely
No,
wasn't in a public sphere, but I think that like autism was a thing that doctors were talking about like way back in the 60s or 70s, but I don't think it reached the popular culture.
no, because even in the movie Rain Man, they don't even say what kind of disability that Raymond has
I
or
think
anything like that either.
I think they called him an idiot savant, and I think Jimmy also is some kind of savant. So, and I don't really like to say idiot savant, but that's the language that they used back then.
Right. Which now we go into like just the disability of autism. And that's
Yeah, yeah.
I like the subtleness of autism rather than having that word
Right, right,
as
right,
well.
right, right. Absolutely.
But yeah, so Jennifer's death caused Jimmy's family to split. He lives with his mother, Christine, and stepfather, Mr. Bateman, while his older brothers, Nick and Corey, live with their actual father, Sam. And exacerbated by Jimmy's behavior, Christine and Mr. Bateman decide to commit Jimmy, like we said, to an institution, unwilling to allow it. Corey sneaks Jimmy out of the mental institution, and they start traveling on foot for Los Angeles. Nick and Sam resolve to bring the boys back while competing with Mr. Putnam, a greedy bounty hunter hired by Mr. Bateman and Christine to find Jimmy. So here's the thing that I like whenever you have Jimmy's brother, Corey, who is played by Fred Savage. I like how he's in his room and he's over there, just throwing the darts at the map. And you're not sure where it's going with that because he's like, okay, I'm thinking that he's trying to put himself in the position of his brother. Like, okay, if I was my brother, where would I be going? Why am I traveling in the direction that I'm traveling in? He was like, Nebraska, no. And then he lands the dart over to California and he goes, yeah, California.
Right,
That
right.
that sounds right.
Yeah, he's just spitball. He's brainstorming and spitballing what his brother actually wants, and because they're separated, I don't think he's aware that his brother, or he's conscious that his brother's just determined to go to California. And but that's all his brother will say when they meet up. And then he
Right,
also has Jimmy also has a fixation on building things. Like if he can't escape, then he'll just start building stuff with blocks or anything that's handy. So yeah, he definitely has some issues that he's trying to work through. And
right,
the other thing is that like his older brother, played by Christian Slater, and his father, Bo Bridges, they're getting into arguments on what to do about Jimmy. Like the whole that side of the family is all arguing about like because Fred, or not Fred, but Corey desperately
or
wants to get it. Like first, he didn't want his brother to be committed into a mental institution in the first place, but there's really nothing that their father can do. And then he's arguing like we need to do something. We need to get Jimmy out. And but the father's like, it's like it's not like I don't care, but I don't have custody. There's really nothing that we could do. So that's when Corey decides that he's going to break his brother out of the mental institution.
right.
He just hops onto something. He hitchhikes on something and he gets to
Yeah,
the
it was actually the Wonder Bread truck or
yeah, yeah.
something, and it was actually ice cream in the truck. Because remember, Jimmy and him wind up eating ice cream because why do you have to be such a pig?
No,
And
it was a Hostess truck.
yeah, that's
It was
right,
a Hostess
Hostess. Yeah,
bread. Yeah, yeah, it's a Hostess bread truck. And yeah, why do you have to be such a pig? Because Jimmy had cake all over his face. But no, I guess he hitchhiked on a Hostess truck. I can't remember, to get to the mental institution. And so
oh
while the
yeah.
dude was
Okay, that was like after they broke him out. That's
yeah,
when that
right after they broke him out, they got into the Hostess truck. The details are fuzzy at this point.
right. But yeah, he winds up breaking him out, and then of course that's when they go on ahead, go on the truck, and then that's when they pull over to this gas station that just happens to be in the middle of nowhere, and that's when they want to try and get a Greyhound ticket to
Yeah,
go.
that's funny. He didn't
Even in
have
the 80s, it was
much of a
expensive.
plan. He didn't have much of a plan, right? He just goes up and was like, how much? I don't know where they ended up at the Greyhound station, but they were somewhere in the Midwest. He says, how much to go to California? He's like $246. It's like, what does $27 get me? He's like, nowhere.
And I think that Corey didn't think that he was gonna make it this far. He's like, to be honest, I could just see him thinking, well, I didn't think I was gonna make it this far because
Yeah,
how hard it was to get him out of the mental institution.
I
But
suppose so. Or maybe he suspected that they would get caught by then. But it's hard to know. It's just like he just succeeded, and the one thing that he needed to do was get him out and then start heading towards California, but then not realizing how exactly he was going to get it. And then a funny thing happened, like when they first got out the truck after the I guess the first leg of the journey, uh Corey, he starts taking out the map to figure out where they are and figure out which direction they got to go. And he kind of turns his back on Corey, and Corey just sort of walks off. Corey just starts
he's
walking him away.
like, I
And
don't need no map. I know where I'm
yeah,
going.
see, apparently instinctively knowing where to go, and he has to chase Corey down and follow him to try to. They start walking together. So yeah,
Right. But I want to talk about Putnam for a minute. He's such a sleazeball. He had like the most punchable face along with the stepfather at that time.
yeah.
But
So
yeah,
so he was a cartoonishly evil villain, right? So just almost unrealistically evil, just pushing kids around and all this kind of stuff, being rude to people, and then like trying to stop, like, so both Corey and Jimmy are running away, and so the bounty hunter is like, or the detective, he's just going to rescue Jimmy, and he doesn't care what happens to Corey because he's not paid to bring back Corey, which is like really messed up and cold hearted. So because the detective is unwilling to try to bring back Corey, that's when Corey's father and brother decide that they're going to do it on their own. So now the detective is trying to sabotage their search for the boys. He's slashing their tires and doing stuff like that because he believes that if they find the boys before he does, then he won't get paid. And he's just that's not how a search effort is supposed to work.
no. But you know what though? I think it works though for the story because I definitely like the race between the two of them. Is like, okay,
Yeah,
who's gonna get there first?
right,
And
right,
you're
right,
rooting for the father and also you're rooting for the brother to get there before he does.
right,
And they
right,
happen to run into the same town that Corey and them go into every single time. Is like as soon as they leave, they're entering the same city as they're leaving.
right, right, right.
So it has a trope a little bit. I want to say that Putnam kind of reminds me of the principal from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, in a sense, where the principal had that little cartoony kind of flavor to him as well. Same thing with Putnam, because the fact he goes into the arcade, he turns the kid around because they look like Corey, stuff
Right,
like that too. So it has like that little flavor of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
right, right, right. So I don't remember much of Ferris Bueller Day Off. I know I've seen it, but I just don't remember it for some reason. It's a huge black hole in my mind.
I gotcha. But yeah, at a bus station, Jimmy and Corey meet Haley Brooks, a teenager on her way home to Reno, when they discover that Jimmy is intently talented at playing video games. Haley informs Corey of Video Armageddon, a gaming tournament being held in Universal Studios Hollywood with a grand prize of $50,000. Corey sees the tournament as an opportunity to avert Jimmy's intuition by showcasing his talent, and Haley agrees to help take Jimmy there in return for a share of the winnings. So, I like how Corey just walks into the station. We already talked a little bit about the gas station with the Greyhound bus and things like that too. But Corey gave himself away a little bit whenever he looks down and he looks over to where the cops are. And then Haley looks down from her magazine and is like, oh, okay, so these guys are up to something.
Right,
And
right,
then you have Jimmy who's playing Double Dragon, which I remember playing that game back in the 90s.
right,
Because I was like hands down one of my favorite games to play in the arcade. And so to be he gets a high score. And that settles the little bit of the nugget that we're getting within this movie too. And then so they go into the back. Haley winds up saying, "Look, if you do not tell me what you guys are up to, I'm going to scream
oh,
right
I
now."
love that. I love that because the reason I love that is because there's a great callback to that particular moment later on in the movie. So I love it because it's like she knows there's something up, and she's trying to find an angle with the two. And so then plus she's probably just nosy because she could have just minded her own business and gone back home to what she was doing. But I think part of it is that she's kind of lonely and she's trying to make it like she's a tough kid that she doesn't need anybody. But she apparently is a kid with no family, so she's kind of lonely and she's looking for companionship. So I think that's why she almost immediately attaches herself to the two boys, trying to figure out what's up with them.
I could see that because if you think about it like this, the two boys need her just as much as she needs them because they're on this thing by themselves. So to have somebody else there with them, that's actually that would actually knows their way around. And you need someone that knows the streets in a sense to where they feel safe with. So what better way to have a girl that knows her way around Reno and things like that once she finds out that there's video Armageddon going on.
Right, right. Yeah. But she's not as street smart. She portrays herself as being more
Right.
street smart than she really is. Like so when
She
they
sells it.
right, right, right. So they basically they hornswoggle her out of her money because Jimmy beats her at Double Dragon. He beats her score. So he takes her money and then or takes her ticket and cashes it in for money. And then they're supposed to find their like hitchhike their way to Reno and they get into this truck and they're in the back of a truck and she says she knows truckers. They're not going to harm her. Her father's a trucker. She knows trucker. But what happened is that they're counting their money in the back of the truck. It's like a pickup truck or something like that. It was like a large pickup truck. And
Yeah,
when it,
carrying cows.
yeah, some cows.
And there's and the passenger inside the truck also winds up spotting, oh look, this person has money.
Yeah,
And the number one thing you don't do is when you're hitchhiking is to, take out the wad of money that you don't even know who these people are, because then you
right,
can try and steal from you, and that's exactly what happens.
right.
Um, Blake Williams says 50K in 1989 was irrelevant to 120K plus.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, that would have been a lot of money. That would have been a nice sack change.
I could use some of that, by the way.
Right,
But
right,
yeah,
right.
but yeah, that's one of the things that I thought that was if she was street smart the way she says that she's street smart, she would not be taking out that wad of money to
Right.
where people would want to rob her.
Right, that's correct. Well, see, that's the thing. She thinks that they wouldn't. They're like she thinks she knows these dudes and that they wouldn't, but you really don't know anybody. So they get robbed and they get left in the street. Now they're walking and Corey's being all sarcastic and whatnot.
Right, I like how Corey goes, "Oh, I thought you said you know truckers. What's up with that?"
Right,
And
right, right,
he goes, "Will you shut up, Corey? I know what I'm doing." Really? So them stealing the money? Yeah, you know what you're doing, all right.
right, right, right,
So I like how he gives it to her like that. I thought that
right.
that was always great.
It's funny, right? Because that's not the only time they get robbed in this movie. And it's like your heart breaks with these kids. It's like I'm glad that they handle it in a realistic way because in a different movie or TV show, the kids are street smart and they would get away, but they never get away. They always get beat up. They always get their money taken. It's like, oh my God, this is heartbreaking. You feel for these kids. And that's where I think that this movie did a good job at it. They do a kind of realistic portrayal of what would happen to a bunch of runaways trying to who didn't really have as much street smart as they needed to survive on the road like that.
Exactly. They get their money stolen 3 times in this movie. I actually counted it. I'm like, okay. So I like the fact that they're going to a little bit of a realistic realm because in the 80s they don't really stray into the realism of certain things. They go for the cheese. This is not them going typically for the cheese like we would normally do in some movies.
Right,
Especially with
right,
them
right.
getting robbed 3 times. I'm like, okay, this is realistic. We're on this journey, but also too, I like how they hustle these businessmen though too. These
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We see how they make their money. They basically they're doing their version of card sharking or they're doing pool shark except with video games, right? So
right.
they go around they making bets and it's like it's a sucker bet because people see Jimmy and they don't think he's capable and then he beats them at whatever game that they're playing and so that was basically smart of them and it worked out really well for in their case.
Definitely. And then they try to hustle this other guy named what is it? Lucas, I think his name was.
Yeah, yeah,
They
Lucas.
try to hustle with his friends into doing it, and then of course that's when we get the famous power glove that
Man,
they
See, that was one of the Nintendo markets. So the Power Glove was not a thing that anybody had seen before. So he pulls out and he's like, the Power Glove.
And he has it in a steel
I love the
suitcase.
Power Glove. And then he's like controlling a video game, the Power Glove, and everything. And it was like, and I'm pretty sure that the audience went wild when they saw it. And so that was the one of the big things that Nintendo was marketing. So this is before the Super Nintendo came out. And another thing I noticed, that I like how they showed the graphics on the screen,
Me
because
too.
at the time it was state of the art graphics. Like this is the most, the highest, most sophisticated graphics that you can get, because it was like 8 bits was the highest. I don't know. I think Nintendo was 16 bits. I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember if it was 8 bits or 16 bits. Somebody correct me. I don't, y'all know it was not a bunch of bits. And so I want to say that it was 16 bits. And I think Super Nintendo was 32 bits.
Yeah, that sounds about right
Yeah,
because the
yeah.
graphics were a lot more.
Right.
They
And then
stand out a lot more.
right. And then after Super Nintendo, I think it was Nintendo 64, which was 64 bits, and then yeah, then off to the races after that. But anyways, so we'll say for the sake of arguments that Nintendo was 16 bits. So that was like, I mean, imagine seeing, like, you seen the trailer for like Street Fighter 6
Yeah,
or Mortal Kombat 1, that those graphics look amazing. Now apply those same feelings to these 16-bit graphics that you saw in the Wizard movie, and that's exactly how we felt about these graphics.
exactly. And we thought they were state of the art
Man,
back
we
in
thought
those
that was
days.
right. We thought that was awesome. That was the most advanced graphics that we've ever seen. So, yeah, they were really trying to promote Nintendo at the time. And
Right.
there's a thing where the father and son, while they were on their way, the son had brought a Nintendo that he had repaired, and they hooked it up to the TVs in the hotel, and he started playing it. And then the father gets hooked on it, and he knows all of the video game lingo. He gets hooked on Teenage Mutant Ninja
Right.
Turtles, and they're like playing. He's playing all night, and now it gets to the point where the son has to unplug the system so they can go and start looking for their brother and son. So yeah, it was
Right. The
it
thing
was
that I liked
sure.
about it was, okay, it's twice where the father puts Christian Slater down, which is Nick. He puts him down
Yeah.
because, oh, you're really gonna play that thing? You're just gonna hook it up because they were in the car mechanics place. Hook up
Right,
to
right.
and he goes, really gonna play that here? He goes, yeah, I'm gonna play it. And then okay, so then the hotel room scene is the same bit again, where the father goes, really, you're gonna play that right now? You're gonna play that stupid thing now? Yeah, I'm gonna play it. Next thing you
Right,
know, Christian Slater goes to bed. Then you see the father playing
right,
TMNT.
right. And that's the thing, like Christian Slater's trying to connect to his father, and his father's not trying to talk. So Nick goes, and he that's when Nick decides to go and play the video, because it's late at night. The father's trying to go to sleep, and that's why the father's annoyed that Nick would just start playing a video game while he's trying to go to sleep. That's why he's like, yeah, I'm gonna play it, because you don't want to talk to me. You don't want to talk to me, so I'm gonna sit here and play this video game because I can't talk to my own father. That's basically what he's feeling at the time.
Exactly. But also, too, the thing with Lucas and with the Power Glove, if you think about it in the way that we looked at the Power Glove, that's like the closest thing that we could come to like VR at that time.
Yeah,
Because think of
yeah,
it like, because if you think about it, when he's over there trying to steer the steering wheel,
right.
he actually, it looks like he's driving the
Right,
car.
right. I'm not exactly sure how the Power Glove actually works. I do know that it was a bust. I think
It
the controls
was.
were sluggish. But what I did notice is that when he was powering it up, like when he's pressing the buttons on the sleeve of the glove, it sounded to me like a tune to E.T. the Extraterrestrial. No, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So they did beep 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 boop beep. That's what it sounded like to me. And
Right.
and that's how he powered up the what put the settings on the glove or whatever. So yeah, it wasn't. And so Nintendo was always putting forth, even though Nintendo didn't really have strong competition, they were always putting forth peripherals to try to make themselves distinctive from the competition. They always did that. Sometimes it's a success, sometimes a bust, but they're constantly going. It was not get just games with Nintendo, it's the peripherals that they're always trying to put forward.
Exactly. They were always trying to change the game when
Right,
it came
right, right.
down to doing their own stuff. So that's something I do appreciate with the originality of Nintendo trying to do something
Right.
different in the 80s.
Right. Right.
Um, so while all this is going on too, the trio also arrives in Reno, gaining more money with the help from Haley's trucker friend, Spanky, whom Haley coaches to success at a casino craps table. Jimmy then begins training on arcade machines with help from the Nintendo Power Line, which I thought was really cool. How he has
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
these binders. I'm like, this dude don't have nothing else to do.
No, that was a thing. Nintendo had they needed that money from the trucker. 'Cause it first of all,
Right.
somehow you had a child that gets into a casino. There's some kind of way a child is in a casino, then she's coaching Spanky on how to win it. I think it's a roulette table. So
Yep.
and she knows because we find out later that her mother had a gambling problem, but she learned gambling from her mother. So Spanky wins a whole bunch of money, and somehow she takes all of it and leaves him $10. Like, how you gonna do that? I mean, I know that it was all on you, but it's still all luck. It's like I figured that she would take half. She took all of his money, so that's crazy. And he just gave it to her, and that was weird. That if there was any unrealistic part of this movie, so
That
they
was it.
balanced the realistic part of the kids always getting beat up and they're having their money taken. They balanced that with Spanky, a gigantic truck driver, giving all of his money to this little girl. I mean, granted, she did help him win all of that money, but still, that's a weird thing to do. So,
Exactly. Because even Spanky's like, "What the heck?" Because
right, right,
he's
right, yeah,
like, "Really?" Just,
yeah,
"Oh, come," and she just looks at him and just, like, kinda bats her eyes and goes, "Come on, Spanky, it's
right,
okay."
right,
And
right, right,
and I'll be like, "Girl, just give me back my money."
right.
I'll be like,
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I need a little more, a bit more backstory. Like maybe she had helped him out some earlier time and gave him a bunch of money when he needed it or something like that. Give me something more than her just taking all this money because
Right.
that's so it felt weird. So
It
anyways,
did.
so Nintendo had a helpline, and it was famous that you pay like 99 cents a minute or something like that to get help whenever you got stuck on Zelda or what do you call it?
Or
Metroid
Mario. Right.
or more any Nintendo game that you could call them because yeah, they had binders because they didn't have computers with that
Right.
information. So I'm pretty sure that since this is a Nintendo movie, they showed you what the inside of a Nintendo call center looked like. And
Which I thought was pretty cool to have that behind the scenes kind of thing inside baseball kind of feel to it, because I remember those Power magazines that my
yeah,
dad used to get me all the time
yeah,
and things
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
And I thought that was really cool. And of course, I also emailed. I mean, I remember when I had my PlayStation 1, I was stuck on a Xena Warrior Princess on this one
right.
level. So and they said, if you have problems with this game,
Right,
email us.
right, right,
Like, okay, what the hell? I'll just do this. Next thing you know, the guy has actually given me tips. So
right,
I actually
right,
felt like Jimmy at that time and
right,
Corey getting tips from the Nintendo Power Line. So I thought that was
right.
actually pretty cool.
Right, so there was the, Nintendo, call center, which they used for everything because Jimmy had to be good at all of the games. Apparently, there were a possibility of like 90 games at any given time they could play at this tournament. So he needed to be excellent at all of them. And so that's why she was calling the tip line so that she could pass that information to Jimmy and Jimmy could, use the cheats, so to speak, to get the highest score that he could on these games. And there was also, like you mentioned, Nintendo Power. That's how I found all of the fatalities for Mortal Kombat. Because like how there was no internet house, was you going to get that information?
Exactly. There's no such thing as the internet. Either you suck at it, or you're just gonna have to keep training yourself to be just like Jimmy. So it's
Right,
either one or the other.
right, right,
So,
right.
but at that time, after that, the children also escape Putnam because Haley winds up, because they wind up finding Putnam winds up finding them by the pool
Yeah,
and
yeah.
finds Corey. He goes, well, and he's always using the excuse, well, I'm trying to look for my kids.
Right, right, right. Yeah,
And so, yeah,
what a detective looking for missing kids would do, right? That makes sense. I don't fault him for that kind of subterfuge, but I just hate the way he's just grabbing kids, though.
man, he just snatched Jimmy like nothing. It's like, oh, I
Right,
found you. Okay,
right,
you're coming with me. I'm like, damn. You should
right,
try it
right,
out for T2 for Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
right.
He would just take John Connor. That's it.
Yeah, just crazy, right?
Right.
So,
But yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, so at that point, that's when Corey winds up yelling over to Haley, "Hey, look, they're coming to get Jimmy. They know where he's at." Jimmy's playing his video game, and then Putnam tries taking him. Then, of course, that's when Haley goes, "He touched my breast."
Oh man, I laughed out loud. I love that, and that's the callback that I mean, because she said when she first met Jimmy and Corey, she said she was going to scream if they didn't tell her what they were up to, and then that's what she screamed. She said, "He touched my breast," an instant response. That was brilliant. He's mad. It's like she doesn't even have any breast, man. It's too late.
And you know what's bad? He's telling the operator that when he's looking up there.
Right. Right. So and then it was called back again later on in the movie. And so that was also brilliant. So that's what I mean. It had a pretty good script behind it. I think what it was probably missing, maybe if the direction had been better, if they had a better director, this would have probably been a smash hit because definitely had a strong story behind it.
Most definitely. I mean, you have Jimmy who's trying to get to California, that little bit of mystery element. You have a little bit of a Goonies kind of flavor to it too, if you think about it, because these are these kids going on their own adventure while the parents are also trying to find them. So you have the adults and the children doing their own thing as well. So I think you have those two lines going in. I think if a little bit more direction happened, I think it would have actually made more money.
Right. And then there's a side story where whenever the detective and Jimmy's father and brother, whenever they would meet up in a town, it's like at one point it was like a, what do you call it? What are the words I'm looking for? A what do they call it? A car derby?
Yeah, like a car derby kind of
Yeah, a
thing.
crash derby. Anyway, they was playing bumper cars. They was playing bumper cars in the street with their real cars.
And I like how the
And
old man's out there just chilling, and he's
right,
watching this
right,
whole entire
right.
thing go down like it happens every single day.
Right.
And
Yeah, just not even paying attention. And then the detective does a trick where he tells this tow truck driver to tow their truck. So the father actually gets the information of exactly where his sons are going. And then when he comes out, his truck is gone because the detective had his truck towed. And then they track the truck down, and it's already been stripped down for parts. I was like, oh man, this is crazy. The tow truck driver was like, how would you? I didn't know. It's like, yeah, you knew. You just don't go towing somebody's property
exactly.
without knowing what you're doing. It's like there's no place where that's legal. I hope
No,
he got
definitely.
I hope he got sued out of business.
But yeah, at this point though, too, they Haley and them are back over at her place, and she's always describing the fact that her house is this big house. She has a lot of friends, and you can even tell that she's BSing them whenever she says, "I have too many friends. I can't fit any more." To the point where I can't fit anymore.
Right, right, right.
And you can definitely tell that she's lying to them, but there's the innocence of the child that it's not even computing with them
Oh, well, Corey
at
doesn't
all.
believe her. I
No,
I don't think Corey ever believed her because it was something that was not genuine that he could pick up on. So he's not going to call her out on it. You're right. It's like if this is something that she's keeping to herself, then he's mature enough not to press her on it, right? So,
right.
but until it's like his backup is up against the wall, and at one of those, it's like when Jimmy was taken, and then she once again claimed that she had friends, right?
Right.
And it turns out she was telling the truth.
And we're gonna get to that in 1 second too, because this is actually something that happens after he gets taken. But this is something that happens though too while they're on there. Corey winds up having the feel to want to kiss her. She winds up. She goes, "Oh, okay." And this is like the first time I've ever seen like in a movie like this where it's like, "Oh, I bet you want to kiss girls." I'm like, "What? Where did that come from?"
Right. It's funny because he starts leaning to kiss her, and she's like, "Ew!" Right? I'll never kiss a boy. And then she grabs him and she kisses him like forcefully, where it's like not genuine, like not a real kiss. It's more like a play kissing.
Like it's more like I'm gonna kiss you just to shut you up, kind of
Right,
thing.
right, 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 right.
But yeah, then of course that Putnam winds up taking Jimmy. Then you wind up having Haley. She winds up summoning the truckers who barricade Putnam on the road and rescue Jimmy. So you have Spanky who has his $10, and and basically his gang of truckers that he's going to give them probably $5 each to block the way to where Putnam can't take Jimmy.
Right. Oh, but remember what Spanky said when he got out of the truck. So what happened is like he's going down the road and there are two trucks in both lanes that are coming towards him. And then he can't turn around because there are two trucks following him, blocking both lanes on a 2-lane highway in the middle of nowhere. So he has no way out. And so and they get out the trucks and Spanky says, "So you like to touch little girls' breasts, huh?" I was like, and then next time you see him, he's got a black eye because yeah, he got roughed
That's
over
right.
as a warning by the truckers.
But yeah, after that, Spanky winds up driving the children to the tournament. Jimmy enters and becomes a finalist after playing Ninja Gaiden. In between rounds, Putnam is unsuccessfully re-attempts to apprehend the children. Jimmy Lucas and the third finalist, Moore Gibson, compete in the tournament's final round. They have 10 minutes to score as many points as they can for Super Mario Brothers 3.
Right, right. But
But can I
there's a
just
whole sequence before that. So there's one where they play the first game. I think it's Ninja Gaiden. So they play
Yep.
that, and then apparently thousands of kids. It's weird because he's training for all the games, and I'm thinking they're going to play all the games. But then the only game that they actually play is Ninja Gaiden, or maybe it was cut down because I would have liked to see a montage of all the games that they were playing, and then Ninja
same? I was
Gaiden was
looking
the
for like a
last one.
montage,
But
right?
but they only play 2 games. It's like, see, that's where a better director would have made that a better movie. So
You see, if they would have gone the guy who made Karate Kid, you would actually have a lot more of the training
right,
the
right, right.
montage
I mean,
of it.
there was like a training montage, and that was great, but they needed a tournament montage where they're actually playing the game. Because the
Right,
training montage is pretty good, where you're like they're calling the call
right.
center. You see Jimmy playing the different video games, and you see like Corey and the girl coaching him and whatnot. So you get to see all of that in a montage form, and them playing around with money or whatever, or scamming people. And then there's what you call it when they get to the tournament, it's basically just that one game before the final game, which is weird. So they
Can I just say this though?
yeah.
They were the people who were doing the sign up sheets were so over the top. They're like
Yeah.
drill sergeants for this video game
Yeah. Yeah.
tournament.
Yeah. They were real cartoony. And so I guess they had thousands of kids playing Ninja Gaiden, and then they had the 3 highest scores. So one of them was Lucas, one of them was this girl, random girl, and then and then Jimmy came in 3rd place. I guess because he had to race across the country to get there. Probably not as well rested as he could be.
No, because they go through. I liked how they go. It's like a Universal commercial now. It goes from Nintendo to now being like a full blown Universal Studios theme
Right, right,
park
right. Yeah, right.
tour.
It's yeah, they're in Universal Studios and they really what you call it, they really display Universal Studios. But I want to go back to this one part. So there's one part where they have the money taken from them, and it's they had scammed some teenage boys. The teenage boys catch them off guard in the middle of nowhere and beat them up to and get their money back. And then they steal Jimmy's hat, which is basically the business because his father has a landscaping business, Woods Landscaping, and they steal his hat. And that's basically how his father, Mr. Woods, finds Jimmy because they when they in this bar, they or this restaurant, they happen to see the kid with his hat on. Right. It's his business, it's his hat. So he knows that the kid knows where his son is, because that's the only place where he could have gotten it. But anyways, so when they're out in the desert, that's when we find out what's in Jimmy's lunch pail. It's all of these pictures of his dead sister, and it's family photos of them together. And these are pictures that I guess Corey hadn't seen in a long time. And he said he always wondered what was in the lunchbox because he never knew what Jimmy was carrying in his lunchbox. Always had it with him. So now they know that this lunchbox is important. They know why he's acting this way because he still feels that the death of his sister. And then there was a thing where that they wanted to give up. Like Corey wanted to give up. Jimmy really wasn't speaking, and the girl was mad at both of them, and they was seemed to be going their separate ways. And then that's when Jimmy, because first Jimmy was only saying California, but this time he said, I don't want to quit. Right. And then they run back to Jimmy. Right. So that was a cool moment. I like that. It
I thought that was cool.
right. They
That
had
was a
all the
heartfelt moment.
right. It's heartfelt, gave you all the touchy feelies, because he's now he's speaking more. He's speaking more than just California. So that's really what drove them to continue their trek to go to California. So now they're in there, and then they play the first game, and then they it's supposed to be a break. It's like a 15 or 30-minute break for the next game. They don't say what the game is. And then that's when the detective finds him, starts chasing them all throughout Universal Studios. It
All thanks
becomes
to Lucas, because
right.
Lucas winds up pointing him out
Yeah,
during
yeah,
that
yeah.
15, 20
Because
minute break.
Lucas, right, Lucas doesn't want to lose. He's actually
And
afraid of losing. And he points him out. He's trying to get rid of his competition.
And then, they go through King Kong, they go through all these rides, these attractions, and then finally he winds up making this great appearance, because even the announcer's really shocked at where Jimmy is, because and Jimmy Woods.
Right,
And
right.
Jimmy
Because Jimmy is missing, because it's like the game is about to start. He's got the first two contestants. He's looking for Jimmy. Lucas is smirking because he thinks that he's won, because he knows he can beat this girl. And they're in Jimmy and the other two, they're in the bowels of Universal Studios, because they're on a ride, they get off the ride, they go underneath where King Kong is, and they're in the machinery, and then they get to the backstage area, and then they end up above the stage where the tournament is being held, and they're all the while being chased by the detective. And then they Fred Savage, whatever, Corey, he finds this elevator, and they all get into the elevator, and then they escape. And so now, meanwhile, the master ceremonies, he's losing his mind because he can't find Jimmy Woods. And so and everything is behind these doors. So then the doors start to open, the steam goes up, the doors open, and you have three like video game stations, and Jimmy is right there in the middle, and the MC is so relieved. He's like, Jimmy Woods! He's so relieved. And in the game that they reveal is a game that I don't even know if it had been announced at the time, like if Nintendo had announced this game to the wider audience.
Okay, so I did some research on this. Super Mario Brothers Part 3 came out before this movie.
Okay.
A year later, this movie came out. So basically it came out in 88. This movie came out in 89.
Okay. So so they were revealing Super Mario Brothers 3. I don't know, for some reason I feel like nobody knew about it, or at least I didn't know about it, because everybody was so excited, or they revealed it in the trailer. I think that's what happened. Nintendo may have revealed it in the Wizard trailer. I'm pretty sure the trailer came out before the game was released. So they revealed Super Mario Brothers 3. Nobody that was in the movie had ever played this game. To them, this is a brand new game. It was a total reveal, because everybody's been training for all these video games they had been training for. They had not trained for Super Mario Brothers 3. So they're all playing, and it's pretty neat, because it shows that Jimmy had a chance of losing because he kept killing Mario, and he had to start back at the beginning. So all
Right.
that, they put some drama in it, so I appreciate that. But we all knew that Jimmy was going to win.
We knew that he was going to come back on top,
Right.
And of course, we knew that he was going to go into the warp hole and everything, and go and warp through it and come out on top of it. Even Lucas disgusted, but at the same time, I also like how Christian Slater and the father come in, and he's over there. Watch out for the turtle! Make sure you squash the turtle. Watch out for this. Watch out for that. And Corey's over there on the sidelines trying to coach him, and he looks over to where his father is, and then he's looking at his father yelling at coaching Jimmy as well.
Yeah.
And Christian Slater just looks at him and goes, "He's a changed man."
Right. Because now he's a madman. He's a video game fiend for life, really.
But yeah, after this happens, they pretty much tell Putnam to go to hell. Then, of course, they wind up leaving, and then we have this great scene where the entire family heads home, accompanied by Haley. Jimmy suddenly becomes restless upon spotting the Cabazon dinosaur, causing them to stop the car. They follow him inside, and Corey finds Jimmy looking at the photos of the family, of one which was taken at the tourist trap. They realize that Jimmy only sought closure where Jennifer was happy. Jimmy leaves his lunchbox at the site, and the family resumes the car trip, happily
Right.
riding off into the sunset.
Right. So the family, it was actually in two cars. So Jimmy's mother, his natural mother, and his stepfather had shown up at the tournament as well. So after he wins the tournament, Jimmy gets into the car with his mother, and then the boys and the girl get into the car with their father in the pickup truck. So they start back home, and that's when Jimmy is like, California, California, because he sees the giant dinosaur statues, and that's where the pictures were taken. And so when they get back into the cars, his mother lets him ride with his brothers and the girl, and they're all crammed in the front seat of that pickup truck because it's not an extended cab, it's just a two-seater.
Right.
Essentially it's just a couch seat, and they're all crammed. I know they're little kids, but still it's three little kids and a teenager and an adult all crammed into that pickup truck.
Which I've been crammed in one of those before. They're very uncomfortable too.
Yeah, yeah, and they ride for thousands of miles to get back home.
Well, they can afford it now. They got the $50,000. They're good to go.
Yeah, I
So,
guess, yeah, and
but
yeah, the other thing is I don't understand where what they was gonna do with that girl.
that's you know what? I was actually thinking the same thing though. No lie. I was like, wait, what about her parents?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
she going to become Corey's sister now? That's
because
going to be kind of awkward.
yeah,
I'm like,
apparently she was lying about her mother and father. It's like we don't really know what happened to them. Like she kept saying her father was on the road, but it's apparent that he's abandoned her at least, and her mother isn't available. So she's basically all on her own. So what are they going to do with that? I mean, she could become like a ward of the state, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. Here we are trying to come up with plot lines for a
Right,
side
right, right.
story. But
Yeah, I don't want to
I
write this movie. I don't want to write it any further.
same.
It definitely has its weak points.
The untold story of Haley.
Right, right. But this is like
But
Nintendo's like I think it's its very first attempt at marketing its video games and its systems and its peripherals and whatnot. To it's already like on top of the video game industry. I think its biggest competitors are maybe in television and Atari, and it didn't. I mean, Nintendo revived the video game industry, so they weren't going to do anything. So it was like they would just, you know, they were just moving their muscles around. They were just they were just
exactly.
flexing. They were just flexing their power and might. Imagine if this movie had been a big success. It wasn't. And then their second attempt was the original Super Mario Brothers movie, and that was not well thought out. And
No.
here's the funny: people always talk about studio interference or whatever. Apparently, from watching the movie, I would say that Nintendo gave these people complete creative freedom because that's what it looks like. And
It
now
looked
we
like a
have
great marketing tool for their stuff, even for the Power Glove. It's like, okay, well, what do we have now? Well, we have the Power Glove. Well, that's perfect. Let's put that
right,
into the mix.
right, and now we have
So
Super Mario Brothers movie, which is apparently one of the greatest video game movies ever made in the history of mankind. I guess because it's making all the money right now.
it made about $1 billion right now,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is fantastic. But I think that the way it wraps up is perfect in a sense because of the fact that for one split moment, Jimmy has, completed his task, and he also has, of course, being able to have that rest in him now to where he can be free of his sister in a sense, and then also too, for one split moment, they're reunited with their family,
Yeah,
and it's
and
just about the family and
yeah,
not about the stepfather or anything. Because remember, the mother's like, "Well,
right.
you can go home now.
Yeah.
I'll see
Oh,
you at
what I
home."
really liked about it is that it wasn't all focused on the video game tournament because that going to the video game tournament, even though that was one of the things that he wanted to do, that wasn't Jimmy's goal, right? Because
Right.
they went to the video game tournament, he won, they were on their way back home, but his purpose had still not yet been fulfilled. And
That
so
was like a side mission, basically,
yeah,
for
yeah, that
video.
was a side right, right. They did the side quest, but he still had to finish the main mission. And then Jimmy had reminded them, I got the main mission, and there it is right there. And they finished the main mission, and it finished on a very sweet note. And I thought, this movie is much better than I originally thought it was. I had been asked about if I had seen a bad movie that when I watched it later that I had changed my mind about it. And I couldn't think of any at the time, but I would have to say this is one of those movies.
Okay. Another thing I want to mention is this. Number one, okay, you know that song that they're all on the bikes and everything, Send Me an Angel?
I don't remember.
Okay. Well, anyways, that song was actually featured on Teen Wolf 2. And yes, I've seen the second Teen Wolf movie
I avoided
because
it like the plague. And here's the thing, I like Bateman. I like him a lot.
dude,
I liked him when he was on Silver Spoons. And then there were a couple other things that I seen when he was a kid actor that I liked him on. I like his sister Justine Bateman. But when I was seeing that people didn't like Teen Wolf 2, I was like, well, and this was especially in the early days when professional critics had a lot of influence on what audiences saw, and they said, okay, this is a bad movie. It's like, well, I believe you. I don't need to see
right.
it.
And here I am, like, you know what? I'm gonna go full in, full wolf mode. I'm gonna go see this movie. But
Right,
yeah,
right. Did you
it's not
like
as
that
good.
movie?
It
Not as
wasn't
good?
as good.
And see, here's the problem. As much as I like Teen Wolf, I recognize that it's not a great movie. Like, you can't compare it to like Back to the Future
No,
or I think Mr. Salesman or whatever that one was called. The Secret of My Success. You can't
right.
compare it to those two movies. So it was just a kind of fun movie that you could watch. And some people like me are going to be huge fans of it, but you can't expect it to be like set the world on fire or anything like that. So
No,
you make us, I mean, it did make a lot of money, but then you do Teen Wolf 2 and you don't have Michael J. Fox to helmet. So it's like, well,
no.
you should have just not made it then.
Oh, I do have a trivia fact about this movie, though.
Okay, hit me.
Okay, so you know how we were talking about how they power on the video games and stuff like that?
Right.
Get this, if you look at the power and whenever they're doing the tournament,
Yeah.
there's no red lights.
Oh, right. You mean on
So
the
all the systems
Nintendo
are
console?
off.
Right. That
So
yeah.
there's like that little small nugget of trivia that I discovered. But that's pretty much it. There's not really a lot of trivia with this one. It's just cut and dry. So
Right.
yeah.
And the funny thing about that, they could have just easily plugged them in. It's like it wouldn't have been a big deal to plug them in. You didn't have to connect them to a screen. You just had to plug them
Right.
in for the red.
Come
I
on,
guess
you already have Nintendo funding it basically. So
right. It could have been that the light probably interfered with the way they were trying to shoot the scene or whatever. Because the lighting technicians are very particular about how lights are shining or whatever. So
that's true.
you know what? I don't make movies. I don't know.
I wish I did though. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this review, man. Do you have anything else that you're reviewing on your podcast or anything like that?
Uh, let me bring up my calendar and see what I have coming up. So, or maybe not my calendar, maybe just my notes. And what do I have on my notes? Uh, so coming up, I'm going. Well, we just talked about Teen Wolf. I did Teen Wolf with Katie from a new podcast called Retro Made. On Monday coming up, I have Forrest Gump. I'm going to be talking about with Chris Smith from Podtastic Audio. Have you heard of that one?
No, I haven't.
I just connected with them just almost by chance. And and basically his podcast talks about how to improve the audio quality on your own podcast. And so I just started listening to it. He had a lot of great tips. And like I said, we're going to be talking about Forrest Gump with him on Monday. And then on June 11th, I get to talk to Frankie and Scott from Shoot the Flick. They have not yet chosen what movie they would like to watch from the grand list of movies. But as soon as they choose from that list, I'll know what we'll be talking about.
Awesome. And you're doing the Lord's work over there, man. You're doing a
Yeah.
very good job. You're very welcome.
Well, I'm trying. Thanks. I really appreciate that.
Welcome. So I do have a little bit of announcements. The 2023 film Ear. Tamika and I will be reviewing that film on the 1st of June. And then on the 5th of June, I will be joined by my good friend Taco from Let's Talk About Something. And we're going to be reviewing The Thing on 2023. Beth will be joining me from the Made for Movie TV podcast, and we're reviewing The Great Outdoors at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. All these times can be found on the community section of the YouTube channel, so that way you guys can see what we have coming out. Rossi, my co-host, actually booked Big V from Nappy Roots, so she's gonna be interviewing him. I can't wait to have him on the podcast and her interviewing him for things that he's done in his past and future and things like that. So I can't wait to see that interview. So that's everything that's happening over here at Movie Lovers Night. Thank you so much to Blake, who winded up commenting. I do appreciate that so much. So please don't forget to like this. Don't forget to subscribe. We also have merch. So if you guys want to get a t-shirt, want to support us, that's a big way of doing it. If you want to donate, go to Buy Me a Coffee, get me jacked up on some caffeine, and that'll be very helpful as well. And always until next time, guys, it's been fun, and it's been real. I can't wait to do this again, and have a great and safe night.